Okay, me and Nate met back in 1982 of the summer of 1982. And I remember Nate came over my house, I think a few days after I moved over. He came because I was on the porch playing. And, and he told me my name is Nate, so-and-so, 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 so-and-so Banks. Well, at the time, Nathaniel, so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so Banks. I just said, you're Nathaniel to me, so that's what I called him, Nathaniel, for years until about some many years later where I called him Nate. So, okay, and I remember that, and then, like me and Nate met in the summer of 1982, and we've been friends since today of 2016, so there was a lot of things that me and Nate has done over the years. I mean, from you name it, we've done it. From going to DJ gigs together, getting our haircuts together on a Friday or Saturday or whatever. I mean, we did all of that. I mean, we went to school at VTOL school for 2 years, which no longer exists, but we went there. And we lived like a couple houses away from each other, down from each other, and we watched movies together, watched wrestling, went to wrestling events together. I recall him and I going to in 1991 to Survivor Series, where Hogan actually lost to The Undertaker, which was something that was a shock to us, but it happened. But that was one thing that we did do together. He spent the night at my house several times. I spent the night at his house a couple times. So, and we played video games together from Nintendo, Atari, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, we've done all that together. I came over his house for pay-per-view events like boxing. We did that. I was his best man at his wedding back in 2001, which was cool. It was tough for me to get through that, but it happened and it worked out. If we had did it again, it would be a whole different story because I'd be a lot better. But those are things that a lot of things that me and Nate did, and we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. We played basketball together down at the factories. We did that. He came. He chilled with me and my dad, and we went over what we call my dad's neighborhood over in Southwest Detroit, and chilled with my cousin Benny and things like that. He came to my house over for Christmas a couple times. That was cool. So those are things I mainly remember about what I did with Nate. And I do remember some things that happened that were crazy. I remember before we used to ride our bikes together, down into the factories. And I remember one time, and this was back in the day, like I would say about 1986. It was this incident that happened that Nate didn't have he had an inner tube that was messed up on his bike. And the crazy thing was that I remember about that was Nate did not have any patches, so he had got this silver tape and taped up the heck out of it. It took it down to get it filled up at this gas station down the street from where we lived at, and then he was like, "Okay, I'm ready to go," and then we rode it down to the factories while we were in the middle of riding it down to the factories. The crazy thing was, Nate. And this was one of the most funniest things, and I know he was mad because we was in the middle of the factory having fun. It was like, it had to be me, Nate, probably Nate Cox, maybe even DJ and JJ. I'm not sure, but it could have been Michael Brooks and even Iron. I forgot, but it was a crew of, it was quite a few of us. And then all of a sudden, his inner tube just went flat and busted. Boom! And they was like, oh no! I remember that. I laughed about it because it was so funny. It was just that funny, man. I laughed till I cried. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Now that was a funny incident. Very funny incident. I can't help it. I still laugh to this day about that because it was just that funny. I remember they had that yellow bike too, man. And at that time, it was a nice, cool little bike. I had me one of them Huffy Challengers. You know, one of them good ones. One of those ones they just recently came out. You know, it was crazy. You know, plenty of other incidents that happened that was great. I remember one incident when Nate really started his DJ career. It was a party on Thanksgiving night at the Club Hazel. And I was like, and it was the first 15 women and the first 15 guys get in, instead of for $5, for $3. And I was one of the first. In fact, I arrived there before Nate, Darnell, and Mac did at the time. You know, and then I got in, and what happened was Nate and them arrived, and they all greeted me with respect and everything. And what happened was a whole lot of people just attended. It was a line out there. It was a line where it filled up past the capacity. It filled up past the capacity where they had to start turning people away. They turned away, I think, about 30, 40, maybe 50, maybe 100 people. And then I remember at the DJ gig, the DJ gig was for a guy named Rico. You know, because he was hosting. That was his party that he was putting together. He put together, and I remember after around 12 o'clock, the people who was 17 and under had to go home. And some of them left. Some of them lied and stayed, I'm sure. You know, I didn't have my ID, but however, I knew Nate, I knew Darnell, I sort of knew Mac, so I was in good hands, and I knew Herb and all of them, so I was in good hands, because they were kind of like hosting Rico's party, helping him out, so I was in good hands to stay, because they knew me, and they knew, you know, Mike's one of us, he stays. So then after they told all the 17 and under people to go home, and then all of a sudden, then 5 minutes into starting the party back up, a big fight broke out. Because at first I looked to my left, everything looks good. Then about 1 minute later, I looked back this way. I'm like, a big fight broke out. Me, Mac, Darnell, a couple of us ran into the bathroom, you know, to get away from the fight. And then here come Nate, man, open the door. Why y'all in the bathroom for? What's going on in there? I'm like, can't you see that fight out there, man? Up there fighting, they had to shut down the party. It was even a little bit of shooting outside. It was just crazy. And they had to stop the party, and the guy who owned the club took oath not to have any more parties there anymore. Of course he did, because I'm sure Rico made a deal with him. So, and to have him do it again, and he did it again plenty more times, but, you know. But those, you know, that was a crazy ordeal. And I remember another issue one time. I went to a party with that same place called the Club Hazel, I think a couple months later, the following year. And I remember I went there, and I remember I had this nice looking, cool looking outfit with stripes on it. It looked like a cross-color outfit, but it was not. It was sort of a knockoff, but it was nice. Everybody was feeling me in there. Everybody, where you get that from? I got that from the Miracle Round. You know, that was a popular store back in the day. Okay. What happened was I went to the mall and bought this nice outfit at the Miracle Round, because, you know, a nice little outfit, you know. So what happened, so then I met Nate and them up at the club, because, you know, and Nate wasn't surprised I was there. I was supposed to get a ride that night from Herb, but Herb had left early or something. But he was there when I was there, but he forgot to do it, so he left early. So Nate and then was getting ready to leave out at the end of the day. They didn't have enough room for me in the car, so Nate stayed with me and called his dad. And he came up here with some car that had issues with not the shocks, but the springs. And Nate's father was like, Nate, next time get your rides together, because I'm not coming up here from way over at my house to come pick you up. Get your rides and everything together. This not happen again. And I had to ride with Nate home, and I gave Nate and them a couple of dollars and gave him, and they dropped me off. He said, you see how this car jumping up and down like that? Something's wrong with the shocks or something. There was actually something really wrong with the springs, but, but that's, that was a crazy. Now, there was another thing that happened that was crazy. It was this incident that happened where Nate wanted to go to Cedar Point. And this was about 1994. And Nate had some problem with the water pump or something. And he had that Aristotle van. It was a nice ride. It had like 3 or 4, 2 seats in the front, 3 long seats in the back, or 2 or 3 long seats in the back. It was nice. And what happened was the water pump was messed up on it, and he asked the mechanic how much it would cost to get fixed. He would say it would cost this X amount of dollars. It was like, is there a way I can get around and go to Cedar Point with that? He said, not with that van. If you drive that up there, you're gonna have to tow it right back, and it's gonna cost you a lot of money. So Nate did say, Mike, we're gonna go to Cedar Point, man. One way or another, we're going. And I was like, how you gonna get that done? And it's gonna cost us, like, he's like, I can get Calvin to fix it. The only thing I do is talk to him, and we can get it done. So Friday, and then I called Saturday. I'm like, did you get the ride fixed yet? Nope, not yet, Mike, man. And not yet, man. Well, me and Calvin getting ready to work on it. And then about 10 o'clock, Nate and them was working on the van. It had to be late, and I don't know what he paid Calvin or whatever, but whatever he did. So, and then about 2 o'clock in the morning, I think, or 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock, 1 or 2, something like that, he called me up and said, Mike, we're going, man, it's fixed. Are you sure? Yup. And I'm like, who all going with us? You, me, Consuela, Marvin, Marcellus, Charles and them coming, but they're coming in this ride, And so I do remember that. And we actually went. That was almost like a miracle, because I don't know how they was going to get that thing fixed, but they did. So I do remember that. I remember also going to Cedar Point with them the following year with Nate, Marcellus, Lucky, and myself. And that's when he had that little New Yorker, Chrysler New Yorker. We went in that, and that one right there was crazy, because I remember at once upon a time, I was a little scared to go up on the Magnum. And then Nate always try to con a person with this, man, if you go on that ride, you the man, Mike. You doing something Marcellus can't do. And me and Marcellus was cool, always been cool. We had our ups and downs, but we were cool. But he was like, you can go on that ride, man. And then I went on that ride, and there was a picture of us on the ride. Of course, we didn't buy it because we couldn't afford it, because we didn't have a whole lot of money. We had enough to get in and maybe to get home, I do remember that, and I do remember going in 1996 with him, and this time we had a huge crew of cats that went. It was me, Marvin, Marcellus, Nate. He rode with Charles and the crew of cats he had, and that one was one of the best Cedar Points. So that was cool. Let me see. And also, I also remember Nate coming over my house. I remember for Christmas in 1987, and I remember giving him this ring with like this costume ring, but at the time, giving him a ring with a little Indian ring or something. I gave him that one time. I remember that. I remember that. Every year I always buy him, hook him up. Even though he has a different religious belief, but I respect that, and he respect mine, so that's cool, I do remember that, and I do, and what was an honor and a pleasure that I remember doing with Nate was, it was a lot of people that was down with Nate that quite didn't accept me. It's not as well as accepted, and I'm not mentioning any names, but he always kept me in the clique. So I do respect that from what Nate has done. I do respect that, because there's some cats that were not as receptive to me as they was with Nate. And I do remember Nate made me plenty of DJ tapes, plenty of them. And I still got some of those tapes to this day. I never play them, but I got them. And if he ever wants to use them, I got a couple of them up in my house. So too bad they're not CD'd, but or like on, but he made me plenty of those, plenty. I can go all day on stuff he made me. I do remember one other thing. I remember, let me see. I remember Nate, me and I used to play basketball at the factories all the time. All the time. Be something we always used to do. We used to even play tag on bikes. And usually, because I was not as fast as Nate on the bike, sometimes I would try to cheat. And the way I would cheat, it would be legit cheating, but it was still cheating. Like I remember Nate, one time we was playing tag on a bike and he would always get me quick. So I had to find a way that he couldn't get me as quick. I had to get him. The way to get him, one time he had to stop for a minute to pee, and I tagged him. He said, "Mike, I'm peeing, man." Like, I don't care. Michael, go get you. I remember that, and I rode off, because, that was, and then I got, I do remember that. Michael, go get you. I remember stuff like that. And I remember one time, Nate, I remember one time we rode down at the factories, and then there was this little, I don't know, it was just like this little platform Nate jumped off of. He called himself possibly being Evel Knievel or whatever. I didn't do it because I knew better, because I ain't trying to hurt myself. Then he jumped off of it. Whoa! Then he fell down. He went down, and from the seat he had accidentally hit himself in the private jewels, and he hurt himself. I remember that. I remember one time when I was like turning 12. When I was turning 12, I invited him to my birthday party, which was everybody was there from Nate's sister Sabira, Nedra, Earl, JJ, DJ, Kevin Lavelle, and even some of my family members. And I remember Nate brought his radio and he played the music. I do remember that. And that's back when we was living on Westwood. Yeah, and him, Nate and Sabira, him, Sabira, and Nedra won all the prizes. I do remember that. It wasn't nothing. It was like candy or something, because we didn't have a whole lot of money. But that was one thing that one of the main things I remember. Okay, I remember. I guess I've been to a lot of gigs Nate has done with him, Darnell Mack, sometimes even solo. I remember one time, it was one gig that we went to where it was a woman, or actually, well, you can say she's a woman, because she was 18, I believe, and she was graduating the same year I graduated. And the crazy thing was, it was a backyard party. And, he played good music, and then I remember we both was wearing this thing I made, and it had a big old dice on it. Mine was red and white, his was black and white, but it had a big old dice, because it was actually a keychain, but I reformed that key, but I took off the part for the keychain, and made it into a necklace, and I had these beads, these black and white beads for Nate, and I had the red and white ones for me. And I had this, and Nate was dressing cool, and I was dressing pretty cool, because I had on this, I forgot what I had. I had like on this one of them old school outfits, which was popular at the time in '94, of course. And I remember we was doing this party for this girl that was graduating, and Nate had to tell everybody, he graduated the same year you graduation. And they asked me what was my prom, and I told them it was today. And you didn't go to your prom? And I was like, I ain't nothing but a fashion show. I don't care nothing about that. So I just kind of so they had to tell him instead of just keeping his mouth closed. He had to tell everybody. I guess but. I remember that was in 1994. Other instance that I remember was it was this other party that we had. It was a basement party, and usually when it's more guys than it is girls, 9 times out of 10 it's gonna be a problem. And it was and the crazy thing about the gig was they had this. Marcellus knew the guy. It was this big, tall, lanky, think he bad, been shot in the head before, ain't learned his lesson from it, I guess. Up there trying to bother people. He even tried to bother me. He tried to bother Mac. He didn't want to go home like everybody else, and so the homeowner and them and the people throwing the party brought out their guns, start shooting and acting crazy. It was crazy. I remember that I think Nate at the time was gone for a brief minute to take some people home like us well, and Marcellus happened to be with them. And I remember who I was there with was Mac, Darnell, and Marlo, which was Mac's brother. And Marlo, he's that type of guy. I take no crap from nobody. He was a no nonsense guy. If you rubbed him the wrong way, he was attacking. So that's just how he was. And I remember that. And I remember I went to one of those, and that was a crazy party. And then the crazy thing, they stiffed Nate and Darnell. They told them they were going to pay him in a couple of weeks. Never paid them. And that was about I would say about September, October 1994. That was a crazy party. It was a ghetto party in a basement. I've been to quite a few basement parties, but that one about as ghetto as you can get. And especially when they had 50 guys and 10 girls, that really wasn't cool. Yeah, so I remember that. I can tell you don't remember that incident, huh, Nate? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. Yeah, okay. But also, I remember plenty of things. I remember when I was the best man at Nate's wedding back in 2001, and that was sort of controversial. In a way, it was a little controversial. I don't know why, and I don't know all the details. But some people wanted Nate's father to do it. Usually it's the best man is usually 9.9 times out of 10 a friend. Or someone they look at as a friend. And me personally at the time, after a while, I started kind of being like, do what you want to do. If you want me as your best man, cool. If you don't, I don't care. It's a tuxedo I ain't got to pay for. I just sit down. Or if I do have to pay for the tickets, I'll just be a groomsman. So, that's the way I looked at it. And I remember Nate called me up on the phone. I think I was playing games at the time, or playing, I think, PlayStation or something. They called me up, ring. I was like, what's up, Nate? Yeah, Mike, guess what? I'm like, what? I don't know how to say this, man. And it's kind of tough to talk about this. I want you to be my best man, but people want my father to do it. I'm like, why? It's usually a friend. Well, I don't know, man. It's a tough decision. I'm like, do what you want to do, Nate. It don't matter to me. And then Lisa got on the phone. Well, Mike, this is what's going on. Blah 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 blah. I'm like, okay, and I became the best man. I was like I said, I was nervous, and I wasn't, things wasn't. At the time, I would put it out there as confident. Now I'm more confident than ever, but back then I wasn't as confident at the time, so I was a little nervous being the best man. So and it was good though. It was good. It was a good thing, but it was kind of a sad thing because Nate had to be more occupied with being with his wife and not coming to my house playing PlayStation as much anymore, and his DJ career started to flounder because, he started thinking more about marriage and having real serious jobs like him working at Xfinity Comcast. So, and that's what he had to do. He had to do what he had to do. So, I'm sure he missed being a DJ because those were fun times. Other things I remember about Nate. is that we used to get our hair cut almost every other week together. And I remember the first time I ever got my hair cut with him was in 1987. And I remember Nate was telling me when we went down to the Celebrity Barbershop, which was a couple blocks away from where we lived on Schoolcraft. And what happened was Nate said, "I want this sweet haircut. That you got a little part right here and a couple of lines in it." And I was like, "Really? Yeah, that's the new thing right now, Mike." I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "Okay, I'll go try to get the same thing you got." So we went down to the Celebrity Barbershop. I had one guy called Mr. Robinson. He was good. He was very good. And he had someone else. He had another barber. And I just told the barber, Mr. Robinson, "Give me the same thing he got." "Want the same thing he got?" "Yep, give me the same thing my boy Nate got." "Okay." And that's exactly what happened. And the next day I went to school. Everybody was loving how I was looking. So even the teachers thought it was nice. And plus, my hair was a tidbit straight, so I could easily make waves very easily. So, and Nate looked good in what he had, and how he was wearing it, so I do remember that. Yeah, that was like the first time I went and got a haircut with him. I do remember that. I remember we used to play baseball together a couple times. We've done that. We flew kites together back, crazy things like that. Well, it ain't really crazy at the time, but we did that. Other things I remember about me and Nate was, we went to school together for 2 years, and that was cool. Me going to school with him in VTOL, it was kind of a tough ordeal because things were such a different atmosphere. But I remember me and Nate always used to be. Somehow I used to see him in the lunchroom all the time, so that's how I was able to chill with Nate most of the time, or before school. And I remember an incident one time by the name of a guy and I liked him, but I kind of didn't like him at times, by the name of a guy named D'Angelo. And I remember one time D'Angelo used to go with this woman, which by the name of Sheree, which happens to be Von's cousin, which they used to call her Coco. But I knew her as Sheree, most mainly. And I remember D'Angelo was saying some things to Nate's sister that I guess was inappropriate or whatever, or talking or something. And I remember one time Nate was like, "Man, I'm tired of that guy D'Angelo, man. I'm going to kick his ass, man." So one day at school, before we went into school, D'Angelo was standing outside, waiting on getting ready to go to school. Nate walked up to D'Angelo and said, "Man, I'm getting a little tired of you talking crap about my sister and all this, man. D'Angelo, man, get away from me, man. Don't start no shit, man. If you don't fuck around, stop fucking with my sister, man. Talking shit, I'm gonna kick your ass." And he gave me his bag. So I took his bag, backed up, because really in my heart I like D'Angelo, but I wanted to see D'Angelo get his ass whipped by Nate. I wanted to see Nate just hit him one good time, knock him down, and have a 10 count. It never quite happened that way, but because the principal or like one of the unit heads or something got involved, and it all stopped. But anyway, that was one of the incidents I do remember. Nate really wanting to get in a scuffle with somebody, that was one incident. I remember back in the day, me and Nate used to play wrestling and stuff, and he would play wrestling with me, DJ, Nate, Earl, Herb, Chris, name it. We used to do that because back in the day in the 80s, wrestling was extremely popular, and any wrestling was popular to us almost. Even the women wrestling like Glow and Powell was popular to us, but those are things that we did, I remember one time, a long time ago, which was in the 80s, I forgot when it was, I think it was about 86 or something like that. I remember one time, we always talked about speakers and stuff like that. And I remember one time it was the speaker sitting upstairs, sitting somewhere in the house, and I think my brother didn't want it. Nobody wanted it. We was going to throw it out. And I decided to give it to Nate. Nate took it, and he actually used it. He took the speaker out because he felt the speaker wasn't any good. But he did actually use the speaker box, because the speaker box helped the speaker sound better. It had a better boom to it, and it was an old speaker, a real old speaker too. It was like at least about like late 70s or something. But it did, and I remember Nate used to always have speakers and be working on speakers and hooking things up, fixing stuff, or stuff that you couldn't fix. He had made a miracle to make them work. I do remember that. I do remember one time back, I would say '88, Nate had fixed our lock, because it was something we didn't know how to fix, how to put a lock in. Nate did it for us, and that was one thing I do appreciate that he didn't do, and we paid him pretty good money, and before, it wasn't it wasn't like $100, but it was a couple of dollars for a cat that was in high school and needed a couple of bucks, so that was cool. I do remember one time, and I would say about what was it, about 1996, and this is about speakers again. And I used to work at this place called the Rural Place Apartments, and it was this people that lived there. There was some famous rappers that were local called the Insane Clown Posse, and in fact, they kind of blew up and got kind of big through the wrestling deal and everything. In fact, they even do some wrestling and stuff like that. But anyway, and there was a rap group. And after they moved out, they left a lot of stuff. They left bags, they left clothes, they left gym shoes. And some of this stuff was really still in good shape. And they left these speakers and this thing called a cannon. This cannon, and it looked like it could blast off a building. That's how, but they didn't work. I didn't know they didn't work, but we had no idea if it worked or not. So what happened was, I said, Nate, I just got these speakers from this apartment that where these Insane Clown Posse moved out of, and they were their speakers, and they just left them because they didn't want them. And I don't know if they work or not, but if you want them, you can have them. And it was like, okay, man, just bring them by my house and I'll check them out. I'll see if they work or not. And I'm like, they look like they about something too. And then I gave them to Nate. Nate like, yeah, these are some these cannons. Yeah, they're not the best, but they're decent. So Nate hooked them up to his DJ equipment to see if they work. Of course, they didn't work. I was like, dang. He was like, hold up, Mike. Because hold up. I'm like, hold up, Mike. He's like, but he did. The deal was, if they worked, you get a free cut. If I can get the speakers to work, you get a free cut. And right there, I was thinking, no free cut for me. But then he was like, let me take off the cross. He took off the cross. And then they started working, and then he played some techno tone, and they sounded horrible. But when he put the cannon to us, it don't, we're like, dang, that's loud. I said, yeah, these are loud. I can sell these bitches, hell yeah. Hell yeah. And then there's, yeah, Mike, you got your free cut coming, dog. And he did cut my hair. I do remember that. That's back when Nate was living on Ostage with Darnell. I definitely remember that. And then he sold the cannons and the speakers to Marcellus. I do remember that. Because them things really boomed really loud. They weren't loud as the speakers that he had in his house. At least like the main speakers he had in his house, but they were loud. And Nate was impressed, like, yeah, these things fine. He showed everybody how loud they went. And he was impressed with it, so I do remember that. Getting one of my first haircuts from Nate. Because Nate, after a while, especially during high school, he started cutting people's hair. I remember before he would cut people's hair like $2 or $3, $5 to start. He would hook people up, and then people would pay him, And I remember one of the first times I got a cut was, I believe, at my house when I was living on Steel. I do remember that. And that was about 1990. he cut my hair, and he cut it, I believe, for free, because, he spent the night at my house, and, he just hooked me up. So, you know, and then I do remember when he really started, I remember one time he was like, "Hey Mike, man, how much would you pay me to cut your hair?" Because this was about 1991 when this would happen. I remember my brother Brian happened to be out to service for a pass. For a weekend pass or for a couple week pass or something like that. And then Nate wanted to buy this Ice-T tape or something. Ice-T new tape. He was like, "Yeah, man, because I'm trying to get Ice-T new tape. How much you think you'll pay me?" I'm like, "I ain't got a whole lot of money, Nate." He was like, "Pay me something." I was like, "I'll pay you about $2 or $3. Okay, that's cool. And I remember he did that. He cut my hair. I do remember that. And then ever since then, I've been a customer of his for over 20 years. So, and that's an honor. And I remember back I think about 2001 when I first got my own computer. And I remember it was a Gateway computer. And I wanted Nate to put down a downloading music thing on there. And I remember the lady who's supposed to come over there and hook up our computer was from Gateway. She's supposed to hook it up and do all these things. And Nate was there and then I was a little anxious because I really wanted to download music and all that stuff because that was the thing at the time. And I remember Nate put like 2 or 3 programs on there where I can do that, and that was cool. And I was downloading everything I wanted. Okay. And another incident that wasn't the greatest incident, at least it wasn't the greatest incident for Nate, and kind of for me too. What happened was Nate went through a lot of trouble to try to get me into this contractor for Comcast, because Nate worked for Comcast. I was going to work for the contractor across the street, they were right across the street from each other. And what happened was, I went there for the interview. I got the job, but somehow I don't know why, I just wasn't at my best at the time. I was cool. I got the job, but I wasn't happy. I felt like something was missing. And at the time I was going through some issues, like financial issues, because if I had that opportunity now, and if it was a different way, I would be much prepared. But at the time, I wasn't as prepared. I didn't have a whole lot of money. I mean, everything. I didn't have no real transportation. I was taking buses, and I didn't really want to be a burden to anyone. So, So what happened was, in the end, like I said, Nate got me into this quality communication place, and I worked there around a week. And Nate would take me to work early. Where I would meet him. First, I would take the bus like to 8 Mile, and Nate would pick me up from 8 Mile and ride me down there. And what happened is when Nate rode me, and then I just kind of wasn't happy with it, and I called Nate up about 2 or 3 in the morning, and it went to his answering machine, went to his voicemail, and I told Nate, I quit. I can't stay at this place. It's not gonna happen. I'm just not happy with this place. And Nate, the rest of that day, didn't talk to me, didn't get in contact with me, and then like the day after that, Nate called me up, ring, yeah, what's up, Nate? Yeah, Mike, you should have quit, man. I'm like, man, but you don't understand my issues, man. Yeah, but you should have stayed in late. Nate, I got a lot of issues, man. I was telling Nate, at first at the time, I didn't have no real black pants. I had to wear dress pants. I couldn't fit, and then the pants I did try to buy, they were too tight, even though they supposedly supposed to fit. That was a problem. And their shirt, they could have sworn that we were rich, because their shirt cost like $25, $30. Just to get their shirt, and I didn't have that type of money at the time. I had, I didn't have it then. I remember my mom got on the phone and told him, like, Nate, you got to understand, Michael's got a lot of obstacles. First of all, he does not have a real ride. Well, I could have gave him a ride. I was like, I understand, but Mike's pride, he's not really for that. He does not want to be a burden to anybody. He's got a lot of obstacles financially. He's got financial issues. He doesn't have a whole lot of clothes. He don't have a whole lot of this and everything. And he wasn't doing a really good job. He was like, yeah, but he was starting to get it, but and he said, man, he ain't giving himself no credit or anything. And I was like, and I was telling him like, hey, look, I'm just not feeling it. And I did feel I let him down, and I told him sorry to let him down. Of course, he was trying to be in denial about it, say you let yourself down, but I think I let him down more than anything, because I remember one time I was mentioning later on that year, like, what you want for Christmas? Oh, you know what I really wanted for Christmas? What, you to stay up at Quality Communications, but you would quit on me, man. I was real happy you was in there. I was like, yeah, Nate, but I wasn't happy. That's the problem. And when and that's how it was. I just didn't feel I was gonna get it, and then it was gonna take me. I was going through too many issues. Where I was working at the car wash at the time, you go in there, you go to work, do 8 hours, 9 hours, or whatever, you get paid. You walk out with $50-$60 at the time, and for that time, that wasn't bad. It wasn't the best, but it wasn't bad. And that was cool. And that was the best I could do for that time, and that's something he didn't understand it at the time. I'm sure he may understand it now, but at the time he didn't. So that was like some of the times that Nate wasn't as happy with me, That was a frustrating time. And I do remember this other time that Nate was not happy with me. He was trying to help me get in this place that they played video games all day or something, and it was over by where he lived at, and I didn't take the initiative to try to apply, and Nate was upset with that. He was thinking that, I don't want to get ahead and all that. It wasn't I didn't want to get ahead, it's just that, I was so used to the car wash at the time, and it was more convenient, so that was another incident that wasn't one of the best times. Another thing I do remember when Nate did, now this is back to some of the better times. Like I remember a couple times when Nate moved from some of the places he lived, I would help him move. Like the first time I helped him move was from the apartments he lived on in Greenfield over to living on Ferndale. I helped him out with that. But the best time I helped him move, which I thought was the best, was when he moved to where he lives currently. He moved from Ferndale to where he lived currently, and I remember I asked him, if you need any help moving, I'll help you. So, and then I even took off early to help him, and he really appreciated that, and that was cool. And because he was like, man, I appreciate that, Mike. And then the next day, it happened to rain where I couldn't work, so I was like, Nate, it's rain today. If you need me, you can come pick me up and I help you. He said, yeah, I do need the help, man. And I helped him out, and he really appreciated that. And I remember that year, he took an oath to give me a haircut for the rest of the year because of that, free haircuts. And of course, I didn't abuse it because I didn't believe in that, because he has bills to pay. So, I do remember that ordeal that Nate did. And another thing I remember about Nate was when we went camping together at the KOA camp. And it was okay. It was okay, it was an okay deal. I was out there in this cabin, and it was kind of a cool thing. It was different. I wouldn't say I would do that every time he would go, but it's okay. It was a decent thing. Okay, another incident. Another thing I do remember that happened with Nate. That I remember. I remember for a little while that I remember one time Nate was hospitalized because he had a bad back, and this was about 2003. And I remember he seen everybody, and he was wondering when I was coming up there. And then one day, this was like one of his last days of being there, I came and visited him. I remember that. He was real happy about that. I even stayed past visiting hours to see him, so, that was cool. As long as the nurse don't tell you to leave, you're good. So, I do remember that. Also, I remember watching a lot of karate movies with him. Sometimes I would rent karate movies or buy karate movies and watch it at his house. I remember we watched plenty of movies together. We went to the movies together plenty of times. I can't even count the times we went. We've seen several movies. We've seen Jean-Claude Van Damme movies together. We've seen Martin Lawrence movies like As a Thin Line Between Love and Hate up at the drive-in. We've seen that. We've seen movies like Tales from the Hood together. We've seen We've seen movies like John Q with Denzel Washington, you know, which was basically a family event dash
When did we see that?
back in 2002. Yeah, that's when your mother was still alive and your father when they, you know, and I think it was for your birthday.
Oh.
We had a lot of fun. I remember times we played basketball at Stoper Park. I remember that. I remember definitely a lot of that. I remember we used to, I did a lot of things. We did that. We played basketball at O'Shea Park. We did that. O'Shea Park. O'Shea is over there by over there Greenfield, right by I-96 freeway. That little recreation center, but it was never the center. It was always outside. We did that, I believe. Or if we didn't do that, or we definitely played up at what's that other place we always used to play? We didn't play at O'Shea Park. My mistake. We played at Rouge Park. River Rouge.
Basketball?
Uh-huh. It was times that we did. It was one time it was you and Tim playing against some older guy in his 30s or 40s, and sometimes I would tag along and watch y'all play. Me and Michael Clark and all that.
Oh, Mr.
Yeah, y'all you would normally win. I do remember that.
Mr. Webb.
Probably. So I don't know the guy's name. He had a family and everything, you know. Yeah, this was like I do.
One of the first I used to go up there and see.
Okay, yeah, we went there. Yeah, also, but I remember playing basketball at the factories all the time. And it would be you, be me, be Michael Clark, Tim. It would be Zadi and Zaire, which were Von's cousins, which we didn't even know that was Von's cousins because at the time, Von didn't know me. I didn't know Von till we went to Western in '91. But, it is so crazy that I knew Von's family before I knew him, and my cousin Benny knew Von before Von knew me. So that was kind of crazy, you know. But those are things that I do definitely, remember that we always used to play back. And then we always used to get people from the neighborhood that would always go down there and play, like cats like Jerome. Frank would come down there once in a while. His brother Randy would come down there once in a while. Sometimes you would have people down there who want to stir up trouble and want to come down there and fight. You would have that, which was never a good idea. You would have people like, oh my God, you would have people like, Chris would come down there and play sometimes. He would come down there and play. So I do remember we would always play basketball at the factories. Definitely. And Bougie would come down there and play. You would have this guy named Sean, who was a friend of Chris and Jerome. He would come down there and play. He would come down there and play. It would times where even we would go down to Chris's house and do workouts. And they would work out with us. Because at the time that was a huge thing to Chris, so definitely. How much time you got? Can I have a closing then?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and since we can't go no further, I guess so. Well, one of the main things I could say over the years, this was actually a real friendship. This is not something that was downloaded or streamed. This was something that was a friendship that been tested through the good, the bad, the average times. This was not a business friendship. This was actually a real friendship. And like what Rob once told me and Nate, like he said, I never had, out of all the success and all the things I've been through, I never had anyone that called a friend. And
Rob.
Yeah, Rob. And Rob said, I never had a friend, and that's one thing you all had that's mostly successful is you had someone that's a friend that you can share your good times, your bad times, and your average times with. So this was a friendship that's been tested through the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever times we had. So I have to say Nate has been a wonderful friend for over 30 years. You know, that's not something that you can buy. That's something that's earned. That's earned through us growing up from kids to being adults. Back then we were like 7, 8, 9 years old. Now we're in our 40s. So that should let you know right there, that's a friendship that's real. I mean, you know my family, I know his family. That's a real bond right there. I was his best man at his wedding. That's not something anybody gets. That's somebody, the tried and true gets that. And that happened to be me. So that's a real deal. All these other people could have been his best man, from Darnell to Mac to Dooney to Q. None of them passed, none of them got that. I did. So, you know, and that's an honor. I didn't know how great of an honor it was, but I really realized how an honor that was. I mean, you know, to see him get married and be the best man. So, you know, but like I said, in closing, this was actually a friendship that's real. We never really crossed each other. We never did each other. You know, if we did, it was like little small stuff that we were kids and we didn't know any better. But now we know you better. Now that we know better, you know, we always stay good and positive with our friendship. And like I said, I hope to have another 30 years, hopefully, if we're still alive and kicking. So, you know, like I said, I appreciate Nate for all the good times and for the hookups, and appreciate him for helping me get jobs. Maybe they were really successful. You know, I do appreciate, you know, Nate just, you know, being the jack of a lot of trades, from being a person who work to put in cable, a person that cuts hair, a person that DJ'd and had a pretty successful career, you know, until he retired around the time he got married, you know. So I mean, in naming, he's done a lot of things. So, you know, he's a husband, he's a brother, he's a son, you know, and he's a good man. And like I said, you know, if Nate needs to have a 50th anniversary, may I be their best man again, if God's willing. So it's an honor and a pleasure, and thank you, and God bless you for everything you've done, Nate, and good night.
Thanks.
All right.